Good evening, I'm Ted. I'm an alcoholic. How's everybody doing tonight? Andy about having a crime before we got up here. Hard act to follow. My sobriety date is 4/20/2017. Imagine that, 4/20. I think some of you here know what 4/20 is. I mean, I had to go out with a bang, right? I couldn't just do it normal. I had to do it different like we all do. But no, so, you know, first of all, it's an honor, it's a privilege to be up here speaking tonight, and of course to have been asked to do so. And my hope is to give you guys a little bit of insight of my experience, strength, and hope. You know, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And so done this a couple times, and you know, no matter how much you do it, you always think to yourself, am I going to get it right? Am I going to get it right? And my sponsor always told me, he said, it's not about what you get right or wrong, it's about what you do and what you know, where it comes from. And that there's a little room in the back. I can go back there and pray for a few minutes right before we get started. So taking that advice on a few different occasions, and then all these things to work out. So anyways, Ted Lanier again. I was born in 1970, January 28th. And you know, we start these things off, you know, went to treatment, and the first thing I wanted to do is want to dig into my childhood, you know. So a little bit about that. I have no complaints, really. I came from a great family. Mother, father, sister, and a big family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole nine. And life in the beginning was absolutely amazing. I have no regrets, no issues with childhood, with growing up. I mean, it was everything I could have possibly asked for. Along with, you know, the ups and downs of most kids that everybody has experienced, I'm sure. But there was nothing in particular that stood out. But the one thing that did stand out was alcoholism. Alcoholism was I don't want to use the word rampant, but it was very prevalent throughout both sides of my family. But the thing about that is, and it's funny how things work out, and excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, so I'm going to be trying to keep my throat clear. The crazy thing about that is, the common denominator for my family was, and you're going to hear me talk about this a lot, and if you've heard me in the past, I really hammered down on this. It's almost like it was split. You've got this professional side, and you've got this personal side, and commonly referred to as a functioning alcoholic, addict, whatever you choose to call it. And that was prevalent throughout, you know, my family and what I saw growing up. And, you know, looking back on it now, I think to myself, you know, at the time, maybe I thought that was right. You know what I mean? Because there was no history of you know, carnage and murder and death, jail. I mean, you know, all the horrible things you hear about. It was just, I was from a big family who really, really liked to drink, but were very successful. And a lot of the successes were chopped in half by, I think my father filed for bankruptcy one year, and we went from here to here, but 2 years later we'd come back up here. So it was always an ebb and flow of professionalism, and if there was a mistake made on the professional side, we were the kind of people that rebounded and came right back to the top. But I say again, the common denominator for those failures was alcoholism. And little did I know at such a young age that would come and hammer me unlike I've ever been hammered before in my life. And you don't think about those things when you're growing up. So you know, at a young age, I would look at my father, who you know, my best friend in the world, and my uncles, and I was like, man, these guys, they're great at everything they do. But man, they love to party, they love to drink. And so what was wrong with that? You know, I didn't see the downside of excessive consumption of alcohol. Granted, with respect to Alcoholics Anonymous, there is drugs that are part of my story, and I will reference those as it pertains to certain instances with family members and myself as well. But again, no matter what it was, there was always a professional and personal side to people that I grew up with in my family. And again, it finally correlated to me. Growing up, I always had to be, it's not that I wanted to be the best at everything, but I wanted to be the best at everything, if you know what I mean. And not that I ever was, but I would do whatever it took to be that way. I think Casey's heard me say this a few times. I mean, you've heard I'd steamroll somebody to get what I wanted. And if that was on the football field, because it certainly wasn't in school, because I didn't do with a damn in school. But if it was on the football field, if it was out there deer hunting, whatever it was, I was going to beat you, and I wanted to be the best at it. And no matter, I didn't care what I had to do to get there. And at a younger age, you really don't think too much about that, because who are you really hurting? You know, we're all kids. We're all growing up. We're just teenagers. The problem with that is that attitude going into adulthood starts to wreck people, and it starts to destroy everything around you. And again, little did I know it would be the downfall of a lot of things to come. So at an early age, you know, trying to figure myself out. Again, going back to athletics, there was chances for all kinds of scholarships to go on and be this college football player and this, that, and the other. And of course, when the time came, because I'm a guy that didn't want to do what I was told to do, and I didn't live with, I didn't worry about consequences, I lost all my scholarships to play football. And looking back on it now, I lost them because of drugs and alcohol. I mean, if I really want to be honest with myself, I could blame it on school, I could blame it on not wanting to go to practice or miss it, but at the end of the day, my interest lied in getting my head wrong and chasing girls, whatever you want to call it, and I just wasn't ready. You know, I just refused, because now you're telling me what I got to do, and you're not going to tell me what I got to do, and that was one of the reasons why I never pursued anything past my senior year in high school. So I screwed around for a couple of years, had a few jobs, and I've told this story before. I woke up, and I come from a military family. Now, a lot of the guys in my family, they weren't careers. They didn't do 20 years. They did their time. They served their country. I think a couple guys did, they retired or they did 20-year careers. But for the most part, it was just something you did as a linear. You know, you served your country in whatever capacity you did it. And most guys did it, and that was the last thing I was going to do. Why? Because there's rules in the military, and I don't like to be told what to do. And I proved that when it came to school and not going to college. So I screwed around for a couple of years, a couple different jobs, in and out of trouble, standard stuff, nothing big. And I finally decided I wanted to join the military. I'd done everything else, finally I just joined the military. So I joined the military, and I joined the military when I was, 18, 19 years old. I'd been thrown out of the house, wasn't living there no more. I'd had a couple close calls with some pretty hardcore nights, which include both alcohol and drugs, and had just literally run myself ragged. And I'll never forget, I walked home from the hospital one night. I had been admitted into a hospital and left on my own accord the next day. Went home and knocked on the door because they'd changed the locks. Teddy wasn't allowed in the house no more. Knocked on the door, and I'll never forget, my father opened the door and he said, "What do you want?" I said, "Take me to the recruiting station." And my father about fell to his knees. He couldn't believe I'd finally come to my senses. So he takes me to the recruiting station, and then off I go. 22 years later, I retired from the military. And but throughout those 22 years, I keep going back to that success personal thing, or professional personal life. When I hit the ground running in the military, man, I was good at it, and I absolutely loved it. Yes, there were rules, but they were the rules I liked. Rules of engagement. You know what I mean? I can shoot. I can shoot folks. Really, I can do that. And not to make light of that, but those I liked some of the rules that were given to me. They were the ones that I could deal with. And it's just where I wanted to be. I'm a high action guy. I'm high energy, and I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed drugs and alcohol. Primarily alcohol to start, because it just fueled an already lit fire in me. And I don't know about you, but no matter what it is that I put in my body, it takes somebody like me, and a few of you have seen how I can get sometimes, it energizes me even more, and I absolutely loved it. You see, I never had a problem with how I felt. I just wanted to feel better than I felt. So I always felt good, but man, I felt even better when I put something in my body, and I loved it. I thrived on it, because even if early on, it was the adrenaline. It was just high energy. I've always been that way. And you take a guy like me, and you throw something else on it. it's like throwing fuel on a fire. And that really come to fruition in the line of work that I chose to do in the military. I chose to do, combat arms, and I wanted to do all the cool stuff you see on the TVs and the movies and all that stuff, and had a really good career at it. The downside of that was they let a 19-year-old go to Germany in 1989 on my own. And let me tell you something: there's no drinking age in Germany. And back in those days, the mark rate was $1 American to 3 German Deutschmarks. So for $20, I was good all weekend long, and the beers were about that big over in Germany. So. And at the time, hashish was really good. So, but anyways, you had to be careful with that though, because the military had a drug policy, and I found out that you had to urinate in a cup, and that could get you in a whole lot of trouble. So we kind of stayed away from that. But the drinking was part of it. In that line of work, they sometimes refer to it as the old army. If there's anybody in here that's up in age, around my age, or if not more, familiar with the military, there was a transitional period in the military around about the end of the 80s, first part of the 90s. It was just the old to the new army. And if you're familiar with that, I think you would agree that when I came in right towards the tail end of the old army, going to the new army, and drinking was acceptable. It was not uncommon to go to lunch and drink. It was not, and go right back to work. And you're talking to a guy that I worked with guns all my life, so, and it wasn't a big party, but it was part of it. It was just drinking was part of my job. And I thought, man, I can be as great as I want to be professionally, and I can drink, and I can party. I'm in forever. I'm not going to do just 4 and get out. I'm going to stay in here until they make me get out of the military. So I loved it. But again, time goes on, and a lot of that professional life, there's more and more expectations of you. And I remember at a young age in the military, they were like, listen, it doesn't matter. I can remember, it didn't matter how drunk you were when you showed up, as long as you showed up. I had an old first sergeant that told me, he said, and this is his exact words, and I was probably the worst person that could have ever heard this. He told me, he said, son, if you're going to stay out and hoot with the owls, you better be able to soar with the eagles. And I'm not the kind of guy that needs to be told that. Because what you've done right there is you've given me a green light to party and drink all night long, and to steamroll anybody I want to steamroll, to have a good time, and I'm going to do that. And I did it for many, many years. I went on and got married in about 92. I dated my wife now of 25 years. We dated for about 8 months and got married. Been married ever since. She doesn't drink. I think the one time she did, she got sick, and I think the one time I got her to smoke some weed, she got sick. So she's just never been that. It's been total oil and water. You know what I mean? It's just I've been the one. She's never touched it. It's just not her gig. You know what I mean? Not her gig. And believe you me, I think I did enough for both of us. Yeah. So anyways, so again, like many people in here, we get married, we start the family and everything. But there was some time in about the mid-90s, I started noticing a drastic change in my performance personally. Professionally, I was good to go, and you're going to hear me say this all night. Again, you couldn't stop me professionally up until a certain moment. But personally, I noticed my personal life started to take a slight turn to the right somewhere in the early to mid-90s. And I'm telling you right now, it was all attributed to alcohol, period. It was all attributed to alcohol. I had an insatiable appetite for alcohol, drugs, and women. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to put it out there. It's those 3 things that literally, other than my job, I thrived on those 3 areas. And I did some very, very heinous stuff, to my wife. Or things I did was very heinous in nature that affected our relationship. It's just, again, it's all attributed to not living with any consequence. Because I'm telling you right now, you could not tell me what to do, because again, I'm me. I'm the professional here. I'm the guy in the military. I'm the guy that's making all the money. I'm the guy that's paying the bills. I'm going to damn well do what I want to do when I leave work in the afternoons. I'm going to do what I want to do on the weekends, and can't nobody stop me. You're just not. It's not going to happen. You're not going to stop me. And I did that for many, many, many years. Me and my wife split up in, what was it, 98, again, due to drugs and alcohol. I was away for about a year. We got back together, and I thought at one time maybe I could make this amends and put things back together. You know, now the kids are starting to come along. I'm becoming a father, but I'm just tanking. I'm just failing miserably in my personal life, just absolute misery. And when I look back on it now, and I've had a lot of time to reflect on it, there's absolutely not one single thing that I can point out or put my hand on or have a thought on that didn't involve drugs and alcohol. And it's funny, we talk about that all the time. Everything that's ever happened bad in my life, and there's been normal bad things, but for the most part, it has been due to alcoholism, drug addiction, period. It's been due to self-centeredness. It's been, a lot of it's due to selfishness. A lot of it is, I had to carry this attitude that, along with not being told, not agreeing or not following by the rules or not living with consequences, I'm gonna intimidate you. I can look mean, I can act mean, and I'm gonna get what I want. And not only did I do that at work, but I started doing it a lot to, again, my family, which includes my extended family as well. Again, time goes on, the career's taken off, everything's wonderful. And I get caught on several different occasions doing things I shouldn't be doing with other women. I get caught a couple possessions. I got in some trouble, a lot of fights, and got in trouble because of alcohol. But it never affected me professionally, and I sometimes wish maybe it should have, because I might have learned a lesson a lot earlier on, as opposed to learning that lesson in February of 2017, which I'll get to momentarily. And that's just kind of how it went for many years. It was just this ebb and flow of I would ruin everything personally, then I would be able to, a holiday would come around and I would patch things up and everything's great, but the next day later I'm drunk again, And I was often asked, why can't you give us, as my family, my children have asked me, why can't you give us what you give your profession? And, it sucks when you're asked that question, because I think now they didn't, and this is horrible to say, but if I'm going to be honest with you, you guys don't give me the excitement that this does. And that's a horrible thing to say. And I look back on it now, and I don't think that was what I really meant. I think that was a lot of just my mind had just gone to a certain degree, where I did not care about anything personally. All I cared about was where I was going to get my next drink, drug, or what I was doing at work. And as long as I could maintain those areas, I'm sorry, but you guys don't excite me that much. And that's a horrible thing to say, and it truly is. And having to come to grips and terms with that in recovery, or when this thing started for me, was very difficult. But you get through it. You have to. 9/11 goes. Somewhere right before, in '98, I decided to join the Special Forces. I'd been in the regular Army for 10 years. I'd done everything I could do in the regular Army, and I thought, what's next? So I had to put a rucksack on my back, and I started walking, and started training, and was volunteer for Special Forces training, and earned my Green Beret, and off I went on a Special Operations career, which was the tail end of my career. Right as that happened, 9/11 kicked off. And, as everybody knows, that was a dark day, here in our country. It was a dark day for many, but I'm telling you right now, what it was for me was an opportunity. And it was an opportunity that, it was a dream come true for a guy like me, because I've been training for this all my life. However, some of the damage done because of that day and the many, many years of deployments afterwards, as it pertains to and correlates to alcoholism and drug addiction, can be pretty scary. So, anyways, so we go, so right about 9/11, let me see, my daughter is, she's, I don't know, my son's a baby, my daughter's about 8 or 9 years old, and and I took off and was not to be seen again for many, many years. It was deployment after deployment after deployment. So now you're on this ebb and flow. You know, you're jacked up. You go on deployment. There's certain things that we would take to sustain my alertness, for sustained combat operations. And again, this is happening to a guy that doesn't need to be happening to. A lot of people can do it, and they're just fine when they go home and it's no big deal, but I kept wanting more and more and more. And I'm referring to certain pharmaceutical medications, but then the downside, you know, you'll be overseas, and there's nothing you can't get your hands on overseas. If I wanted to drink, I'm going to drink. I can't think of one single combat operation that I didn't come off of that we didn't find something to drink afterwards. I can't think of, there's not too many combat operations I can think of that we didn't take, or I didn't take, you know, amphetamines for sustained combat operations. And for a guy like me, I'm not doing it because I need to stay awake. I'm doing it because I'm an addict. I'm doing it because I'm an alcoholic. Period. End of story. I'm doing it because, and I've said this before, I do it because I like the way it makes me feel. I want to be higher than I am. And if I got a drink to get it, I'm going to do it. If I got a drug to do it, I'm going to do it. It does not matter. I'm going to do it. and being put in an environment like that where, A, I get to live the professional life that I've always wanted to live. I don't have to answer to a family. I don't have to answer to anybody else. I can get all the booze and the drugs that I want. And I can do things to folks overseas that need to have things done to them, if you know what I mean. Man, it's an appetite for destruction. You know, because again, I'm not the kind of guy that was able to bounce back from things like that. Thank God, through proper treatment and some therapy, I have been able to, but I never thought I could. So after years and years and years of that, you know, it starts to wear on you. It really starts to wear on you. Somewhere around 2000, gosh, when was it? 2006 or 7, 2004 or 5. I was in a really bad, I think it was 2005, my mind's shot. I was in a really bad, well, actually, let me back up a little bit. And I remember before Desert Storm in like the 90, was it 90, early 90, I had to have a dental surgery. And I've told this story a lot before. You know, everybody remembers their first. You know, I remember the first drink I took. I remember, you know, what I was doing on this day. And I think everybody would agree, we all remember our firsts. One of the first things that I remember was, not only did I remember my first drink, the first several drinks, I also remember the first time I got drunk, and I also remember the first time I took an opioid pain medication pill. It was right before Desert Storm, and I just remember doing that. Years later, 99, I break my ankle. I had another one. I remember that one. 2001, after the towers fell, I got hurt off of my first deployment. Came back and I was on a prescription. And from 2001 until 2017, I was on a prescription medication for opioids. Now you start to mix those with alcohol. Now not only can I buy alcohol legally, but I can get my dope legally too. And you would think that'd be enough, but not for me. I've got to get it any way I can because, again, one's great, 1,000's better. So I've got this thing now, as time goes on, years go by, deployments go by, I keep getting injured, helicopter accidents, vehicle crashes, IED blasts, you know, and at the time it's like I don't want to stop down because I don't care what I'm doing to myself and I don't care what it's doing to anybody personally, but you're not going to stop my professional career. It's not going to happen. No, I'm not going to slow down. There's got to be a drug for it. No, I'm not going to slow down. I'm going to sit here and drink for a few days. I'm just not going to stop. I've got to figure out a way to keep going because I'm not going to give in to anything that I don't want to do. I'm just not going to do it. And so here we go again. I'm talking about that professional, personal life. It's just compounding and compounding and compounding. And as I'm flying high and I'm doing great, I am leaving destruction in my past, in my path, being caught numerous times for infidelity, numerous times. Stealing medication, just drinking, tearing shit up, fighting. And none of it would stop me because, again, I thrived on the energy. I thrived on being a guy that can do what he wants to do and nobody's going to tell me no. and it was just a dangerous mix. However, I was still able to maintain a pretty solid career, and then somewhere in about 2007, I had finally had enough, and I was like, you know what? I think I need to start looking at retirement. And ended up retiring from the military in May of 2011. Now, you would think there'd be a big happy rainbow at the end of all this. You know, just got finished doing it. And again, I retired with full honors. Never got in any trouble that affected my retirement. Never lost a grade or position or rank. Never did. I retired as an E8 Master Sergeant, and had a great career. And I thought, you know, maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe things will get better. And little did I know, retirement at that time was, while it was the right thing for me to do, it was probably the most dangerous thing that a guy like me could have ever done. Because if you've got somebody like me that does what he wants to do in an environment where there are rules and laws, now you're going to set me out with nothing. And oh, by the way, I get a disability check, I get a retirement check, I can be a contractor, make $650 a day, and you think I'm going to be successful? Yeah, I'm going to be successful, all right. I'm going to be very successful, but I'm also going to be very, very, very out of my head, if you will. So it was again, it was very dangerous. So, but I once thought to myself, maybe I can shake this up a little bit, straighten things up, and I just couldn't. By the time I retired, it had gotten a hold of me so bad and we've all heard the stories. You know, I could not. When I got to that point where I couldn't start my day without something in my system, I knew something was wrong. And again, not to sound like a broken record, but I still was able to, I still had a job. My name in the special operations community had not been tarnished. You know, all the bad and evil that I had done I never got caught. So there was still opportunity for me to continue to maintain somewhat of a professional life. And not to mention, I still had money coming in. So as long as I got money coming in, you know, I don't need to rob and steal. I got money, it's coming in. Now, looking back on it now, I'm probably about 9-10 years behind where I need to be financially, but I mean, that's just how it goes. And you know, I'll make that up one of these days, but, and it's I mean, a $2,000 a month habit is pretty steep pretty quick. So anyways, so you know, finally retire and I get out. Contract for a little bit, and then in 2015, I was offered a job on base as a GS civilian, a shooting instructor. Right now I'm a current shooting and urban warfare instructor. And by the time 2015 had rolled around, it had gotten so out of control that I started hearing about this stuff called, you know, the whole PTS thing. And I will tell you this, there's not one single time that I regret pulling the trigger. I can account for everything, every time I had to pull the trigger. However, there's 2 times in which I had to take human life that nobody should die like that. You know, and that stung, you know, as much as I love this country, and as much as I will do anything to defend her, the manner in which lives were taken on 2 different occasions in my life is just not by the books. It's not supposed to happen that way. It's just not, and it's horrifying. You know, and I'd come to a point where I couldn't deal with those feelings and emotions anymore. And the best way to do that was, as most of us in here would agree, suppress it with as much drugs and alcohol as I could. Because now, just being great at my profession is not good enough. You know, it's just not working anymore. Eventually the alcohol and the drugs don't work anymore. And eventually now I'm falling apart. I don't know what to think. I don't know how to think anymore. You know, I'm horrified with these nightmares. I'm horrified with the possibility of failure. I'm horrified with the possibility of finally getting caught. And quite frankly, I'm horrified by being judged by God. And that's a scary thing. It's extremely scary. So Things are falling apart. And I thought, well, I get this job in 2015. I want to be back working on base. I'm going to be working around, guys in the community. Things are going to be on the up and up. And it's just I had finally burned it down so much where there was no way that I could fix this on my own. And I still didn't believe it. And I was going to still try to power through it. Depression had kicked in really bad. Now all of a sudden, at 45 years of age, I don't want to live anymore. And I'm thinking the only way out is just, well, I've done everything I can do. If I don't do it to myself, these drugs, these alcohol, it's going to take me anyway, so why don't we just do it ourselves? 2 failed suicide attempts, I woke up twice, twice. Yeah, and even that, who does that? I'm so screwed up I can't even kill myself. And I was too chicken shit to shoot myself. I had to try it other ways. And I woke up on 2 different occasions. And I'm not supposed to. I got a family, man. I got a kid. I got a daughter, a son. And my son, he comes out in the garage, and of course he finds me. And I'm finally waking up. I'll spare you the graphic details, but twice. Once wasn't good enough. I had to try it twice. And I couldn't even do that. I could not do nothing. I'd finally my wife had finally called me. I'd had a sustained relationship with another lady for 12 years. That finally came crashing down. And everything was just starting to crumble. Everything. And I know it sounds funny, but I still had a job. I still had my profession. The only thing I could grasp onto was like, well, at least I'm still professional. At least I still got that. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror, and I hated every single goddamn thing I saw. But at least I had a profession, and you couldn't touch me. And as sick and as twisted as that sounds, that's the only thing I had hold of, the only grasp I had. And I would always go back to thinking, everybody else in my family, they did just fine, and they lived long lives. I'll just keep trying to hold on to this. And finally, in 2017, I've told this story before. I was at work one day, and I woke up and I was tired. And it wasn't sleepy kind of tired. I was just tired. I knew something was wrong. I knew something was not right. I was telling a buddy of mine at work, and he talks about how, hey man, it's okay. We always get there. We always feel these things. Just we can talk and everything will be just fine. And I thought, yeah, okay. And I know my buddy Dave, he meant what he said, and I understand that. So I went on about my day, and I took my guys down range, and we were just doing some pistol work that day. And, I got 5 guys I'm training, and I'm on the range, and of course I draw stroke my gun. And for the first time in 30 years, I couldn't pull the trigger. For the first time in 30 years, guess who couldn't do his job? Guess who wasn't a professional? Me. I talk about those 2 worlds colliding. At that moment in time, that profession, that personal life that I tried to avoid, that I burned to the ground, had finally slammed home into that professional life, and I knew I was done. I'd been pulling triggers all my life. I couldn't pull a trigger on a gun. I could not do my job. And at that moment, I knew I'd lost it. That was the breaking point for me. That's when I knew that all hope was lost. That was the only thing I had left, was to be professional. It was the only thing tangible that I had left in my life. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I had absolutely ruined everything else. I had drained every account. I had maxed every credit card. I had sold off everything. I had lost everything. And when I lost the ability to do my job, I knew that was it. And I knew if I did not get help right then and there, I was not going to make it another day. There was absolutely no way I was going to make it another day. So I started looking around. I thought, well, I got to go somewhere, And I tell the story all the time. I was just kind of flipping around on social media, and I saw this place called Warrior's Heart. And I get really emotional about this, because I never thought there was a place that existed that cared about a guy like me. Because at this time I thought God hated me, my family hated me, my children hated me, my wife was divorcing me. I mean, it was just sheer, it was hatred and disgust. But I found this place called Warrior's Heart, and that's actually, I went to this place. It was specifically designed for veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs, first responders, and they specialize in not only addiction but PTS and mild traumatic brain injury, all of which I suffer from at that time. It was probably the greatest place and the greatest decision I ever made in my life. I went down there. I had to go to detox, and I tell this story. The day I left, and I've got pictures of it the night before I left, but I tried, and like many of us do, I tried to drink as much as I could and take as many drugs as I could, and so I get down to fly down to where was it, somewhere in Austin, Texas. I had to go to detox, and when I landed there, I told myself I was never going to put another substance in my body again, period. There was absolutely no way. So I get the detox, and I tell them all the drugs I was on and the alcohol and all this stuff, and they're like, well, we got this stuff called Suboxone. I was like, no, I'm not taking that. I said, you didn't hear me what I said. I'm not putting another substance in my body. I think I made it about 36 hours, and I was begging for some Suboxone. so anyway, so I get down to there. So we go to, I get down to Warrior's Heart, and I'm here to tell you, and I'll try to lighten this thing up a little bit. It was, in order for me to fix these psychological problems that I had, and I say had because I feel with the therapy that I received and some of the things that I've received, they're just that. I had them, and I don't have them anymore. But first I had to fix the addiction piece. First I had to get clean. First I had to get all this shit out of my body because we're not going to fix this without doing that. I had to get my heart right first. I had to get clean. I get clean, and once I get clean, we're starting to dig into the root of the issue, some of the psychological things. What makes Teddy tick? What makes, why did I have this big hang up on trying to be this professional God and not give a shit about myself or anybody else personally? And I had to figure out those things, and Warrior's Heart was able to teach me those things. And I was down there for about 2 months. And I kept extending. My time was up. I was like, hey, can I get a week extension? They're like, yep, absolutely. That week, can I get another week extension? Not to mention the food was great down there. So, but no. So I get down there, and listen, I would love to be able to sit here and tell you that the road has been easy. It has not. Frank often says, he said, there's good days, but I'm gonna tell you right now that bad day's coming. And there's been a few bad days. I mean, I'm looking at April 20th will be 2 years. I'm new to this game. It's a game I like. Don't get me wrong now, and I'm gonna be the best at it, best I can be. But in this short little time I have of sobriety, it is so true what they say and what has been taught to me about this program. If I do what I'm told to do, and I do exactly what that book tells me to do, and I come here with you guys, I'm going to be okay. I've survived major back surgery. I've been put back on opiate medications, used them correctly, got off them, no relapse. Period. End of story. Absolutely none. The only way I got through that was with honesty, because I know when I need them and when I don't. There was a lot of other countermeasures put in place, but it proved it can be done. The back surgery, my father, and this is tough. My father passed away in August. But the cool thing about that is he got to see his son sober. And despite my misfortunes and addictions, we were always the best of friends, always. We boozed together, we drank together. My father, he struggled with alcoholism for years. He finally put it down probably about 4 years ago. But he got to see his son. He died knowing his son was a sober man, and that was tough. And if you don't believe in sponsorship, I'm gonna tell you right now, sponsorship was a catalyst for my success through the passing of my father. because I knew it would take the pain away. I knew exactly what would take that pain away. But I couldn't do it, and I wouldn't do it. So we get through that, you know. And it's just the ups and downs of life, you know, having to rebuild financially. You know, you're talking to a guy that spent $2,000-3,000 a month for years and years on dope, booze, partying. When you go to the bar with me, nobody paid nothing. I paid for everything. I don't care. Just how it was, you know. So you got to rebuild from all these things, and sometimes it sucks, you know, because for every good day, there's going to be a day that's going to come around and kick you in the ass. And I guarantee you that, and I'm here to tell you it has kicked my ass several times in the past almost 2 years. But if I just keep showing up, and where's Kirk at? If I just keep doing the deal, you know, Kirk knows what I'm talking about, I think I'm going to be all right. I think I'm going to be all right. And it's something that I want. I get fired up a lot. I get excited about this. I stay very active in recovery. I stay in touch with Warrior's Heart. I do as my hell. I got their emblem tattooed on my chest, for Christ's sakes. I mean, they saved my life. You know, I mean, I'd be dead without them. But I do everything I can for Alcoholics Anonymous. I do everything I can for my fellow man, fellow woman, in the capacity of which I can be of service to them and others. Period. End of story. Because this is now I look at this like I look at my profession. You know, alcoholism, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, it's not a profession, but the effort I put into it gives me more happiness and more motivation, just as much, if not more, than I used to put in my profession otherwise. And I think that pays big dividends for a guy like me, because I've got to have something to do. I've just got to pass this thing on, you know, and I enjoy doing that. Because I'm telling you, the gift that was given to me, people didn't have to give me shit. Warrior's Heart, where I went, folks I've met since then, didn't have to give me a damn thing. All right, but I had to show up, and I'm going to keep showing up, because I know what happens if I don't. I've seen it, I've heard about it, I've read it. Hell, I know what can happen if I don't stand and use these tools that I've been given. You guys hold me accountable, period. Whether you know it or not, you do. You motivate me. Everybody in this room motivates me. Everybody in this room motivates me. This building motivates me. This whole thing motivates me. And if I can just live day by day and do every single thing I can to pass this on to the next person, then that's what I'm going to do until my last breath, and you can bet that. Because I will attack this and continue to attack this just like I did everything else that brought me happiness, because this is what brings me happiness. To be able to stand here in front of everybody and you guys get to hear what I've got to say, it's humbling, man. It's very humbling, and it's an absolute honor. I could literally go on and on and on. I wish I was feeling a little bit better tonight, but it's been fun. I really appreciate Andy for having me up here. Hope I didn't bounce around too much. I love you guys. I love this place. I love to be here tonight and talk to each and every one of you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.